Growing Up White, Growing Old Rainbow by Virginia Ann Woods of Kingscliff 2487. Narrated by Janine Penfold. I was born in 1959 in Sydney, northwestern suburbs, and all the faces around me were white. Diversity was the different hair and eye colours. Many of my mother's cousins came from country western New South Wales and were redheads, drawn from the Irish ancestry pool from both sides of Mum's family for 3 generations in Australia before her. My father's family adding only a splash of German to the Anglo-Saxon pool. Most of the people around me looked the same, with these hair and eye colour variations. There was only English spoken in the streets, and multiculturalism was buying Chinese food for a rare takeaway treat. My Nana's favourite chicken chop suey was probably not representative of the highest form of Chinese gourmet cuisine. My Nana worked in a laundry, which was run by a Lebanese family who were part of our Catholic community. As a preschooler visiting my Nana at work, I have a memory of curiously walking up to a woman sitting at an ironing press, dressed all in black. She offered me a piece of bread. It was nothing like I had experienced in my whole 4 years. It was flat, white, with little bumps in it. I can still remember the taste, though I can't describe it. Strange and wonderful. I remember the sweet warmth and kindness of the woman. The lives of Lebanese and Mediterranean people must have appeared strange to the adults around me. I grew up with these people being called names, which I now know are derogatory, but at the time was normal, and they seemed to be the brunt of jokes with their wine-making in the backyard, smelling of garlic and large families with grandparents all living together. Gradually, over my childhood, the colours of the neighbourhood were changing. In the 1970s, more families of different background were moving into our neighbourhood. My favourite family, who remained close, was the Furnaces, and Auntie Clara, as she became to us, who was from Hungary. Her mother, Mrs. Zoltan, migrated in the refugee program after World War II with Clara's 2 sisters. I became interested in the delicious foods, especially cakes and biscuits, the language and customs. Going into Mrs. Zoltan's home in Cooma, New South Wales, was so elegant, with beautiful embroidered fabrics and handmade lace. I was struck by the courage of their story of surviving World War II and their journey out of Europe to Australia, and influenced by the sweetness, humility, and strong faith of Mrs. Zoltan. In the mid-1970s, the local strip shopping centre became more diverse. John, the Greek milk bar owner, was joined by Tommy Fong, the chemist, of Chinese background. By the late 1980s, when the local GP retired, a doctor of Indian origin moved into the house and took over the practice. I found it strange, but interesting, that his elderly parents put their chairs out the front of the house, outside the fence on the street, to sit during the day, watching us all go by. It was strange for our mostly Anglo neighbourhood, but when I went to India on my travels, I realised this was very natural to Indian people who spend a lot of time talking to each other in the street. A custom that connects neighbours. It felt like my world was broadening, changing colour, adding to my previous familiar black and white world. Growing up through the 1960s and 70s, Aboriginal meant boomerangs, corroborees, people who went walkabout. The picture I got from those around me was they were native people who couldn't hold alcohol, were lazy and unreliable. I lived with this version of Aboriginal until I went to university. They were the invisible people. I knew there was an Aboriginal community in Redfern, but in 4 years of walking through Redfern to Sydney University, I don't remember ever seeing any signs of an Aboriginal person. I understood the stories I had about them when I learnt about stereotypes in my psychology and sociology subjects. I was open to seeing how my views are formed from the people I grow up around and my experiences, how they are all gathered into these beliefs that form apparent truths. I was completely shocked in the 1980s to read Sally Morgan's books, My Place and Wana Maraganya, to learn the true history of the Aboriginal people of Australia and the effect of colonialisation on their culture and life after many thousands of years of living in this country. I wondered why I had not learnt about this at school. It was an opportunity to adjust the stereotype I had learnt in my childhood, and I became more curious about this ancient way of living. By my 30s, I was becoming adjusted to seeing differences as interesting, and those old stereotypes might pop into my thoughts, but didn't last long as I had these joyful, vibrant ways of seeing diversity. As I moved through my 7th decade, my life has opened from a black and white view to a wide, rainbow colour version of people in the world. Diversity now means many ways of being and living. My life is fuller, my vision broader, my way more generous and kinder. Fear of difference has given way to curiosity. That same curiosity I had as a 4-year-old sharing the Lebanese lady's bread. I am filled with gratitude and warmth as I enjoy my falafel roll with hummus and tabbouleh wrapped in flatbread now. From the monochrome culture of my childhood to the multicoloured streets of our cities and towns across Australia and places where I can embrace the most ancient of cultures in the world. There are mosques and churches of all denominations in many towns where people have sought space to find a peaceful life. Because in the end, we all have one thing in common: a desire to provide a happy, secure life for ourselves and our families. Let's celebrate and enjoy the differences and honour the similarities. The end.